Hi, this is Jeff Blauette, technical agronomist with Cooperative Farmers Elevator, and on this week's Field Friday segment, something we touched on last year, I wanted to retouch on this year. We're starting to see it again, but this soybean gall midge larvae damage. We've got a few plants here in this field. This was here 2 years ago, right across the waterway from where we're at today. There was some infestation last year. Matter of fact, we did our video there last year where we talked about it. And it's back here again. I don't know how many years prior to that it was here, but the first gall midge larvae damage that was kind of documented was in 2018. Probably was around before that, before we really knew what we were even looking at, and it started more in Nebraska. But we've definitely had an infestation around this area. Luckily for us, it hasn't gotten a lot worse yet, but it's here and it's not getting any better. It is spreading some in a few more fields here and there. So I wanted to talk about it again. Right now it's a notable thing. Along this is the outside end rows here, field edges, but you can start walking along and you'll start noticing, maybe you can even see in the camera here, there's a bean plant that's starting to wilt. We had a decent amount of rain in this field, so it's not dry weather, but as we look at what's going on these plants that are wilting, there's quite a few in this field that are starting to wilt here. As I start looking at them, there's a lot of gall midge larvae doing some feeding, and I've got some pictures here for you. Basically, they infest that lowest part of the stem, right where the ground and the stem kind of get together. What the thought is, they're pretty certain that the infestation, those larvae, when they try to infest that soybean plant, as that soybean plant grows, the bottom of that stem a lot of times will kind of get a little bit of a cracked appearance. It kind of isn't a solid coat around the stem, it kind of cracks. That seems to be an opening where they get into the plant and start feeding, and then they start feeding on the outer edge of that stem and do enough damage over time, and especially as they start to populate, they start choking off that stem and make it, first of all, they make it brittle. We can walk through here, and I've got some more pictures here where if you go into some of these and you just push on them a little bit, those stems will crack over. If you'll notice the ones that crack, there seems like there's a little bit of white fungal development right where the soil level meets that stem. If there's an infestation of gall midge larvae, you'll see that white mold development the way it seems, and it's not white mold like we worry about in other years. It's a different type of fungus. It's not the same thing, so you don't want to confuse that, but this is right where the soil line meets the stem. And you can just see that the stems that have that are the ones that have the ability, when you push on them, they're going to crack. And then there's the orange, the little orange larvae in there. I've got some more pictures here. We took some up close pictures today again. You guys have probably seen them in trade magazines, but here's some of the larvae. They're really, really tiny. These, as they get to any development, they're starting to turn orange. You'll find, we've got a picture here with quite a few. So their damage is done in numbers. They can really, for whatever reason, they can really populate, and they can really get into doing a lot of damage, even though they're so tiny, because there's so many of them. I don't know how many is in a stem. As you carefully dissect them, you can keep finding more and more sometimes, but it is something we need to be aware of. A lot of universities, Iowa State and Minnesota, I think South Dakota State, Nebraska, they've been a concerted effort between the universities to try and research this in different ways. They're trying to find the timing. So this starts out as a fly, a little fly, and then when that lays eggs, it becomes this larvae that's causing the problems. The larvae, or the fly, is the basic hatch period. Looks like sometime the last number of years when they've been able to trap them, it's in that mid-June time frame. 15th of June, 20th of June is kind of when a lot of stuff started showing up in Iowa, the way it seems, and the surrounding areas. We really don't know how to manage them yet, though. That's the unfortunate part right now. There's a lot of research effort going on. Throwing an insecticide on doesn't seem to help us. The insecticide that you're going to apply, it's hard to get it down to where that infestation is going to happen, down around the base of the stem at the ground level. So that's really difficult. A couple things that they have seen some very limited amounts of success with, and it hasn't been consistent, and sometimes it looks like it didn't even do any good, but they have found a little bit of effort where putting an old soil insecticide on at planting, and they've done this in research work, is just about all that's been done, but Thimet, A granular insecticide has shown some effectiveness occasionally. Again, not consistent, and they're researching it again in different placements and things, but that's of a little bit of research work being done on that. Another thing that they found actually some decent success with is, believe it or not, a cultivator. If you think about where that cracking of that stem skin is, it's right at the base of where the ground, right at the base of the stem. If we can throw a little soil around that before the infestation happens, that has shown some promise as well, but it's, again, inconsistent. I looked at that this year because I had heard that last year. We had, the first alerts that I got were mid-June as far as the flies emerging. I kind of thought, well, if we want to get ahead of this, we'd have to go out and cultivate about that time. Beans were awful small, and it'd be awful difficult in some cases to be able to throw enough soil around to do anything yet at that stage because of the size of growth. Now, every year is going to be different, but it wouldn't have been very easy in a lot of fields. The other complication is it's really difficult with all the no-till beans we have around here. It's difficult to cultivate and throw any soil in that no-till environment. So it's something that's being worked on yet, but it's a work in progress, you'd say. There isn't a real great management strategy, or there isn't even really a good one, I would say, at this point, what to do. But I just wanted to touch on it again. As you're walking along these fields, or if you've got a waterway or some ditches you're mowing, or some things that you're seeing along the outer edges where you're starting to see some bean plants wilt and die, a lot of times, especially in the the western part of our territory, we've kind of always assumed that that's white mold. I have not seen any white mold show up yet this year, but I have seen bean plants wilting, and it's the gall midge larvae that we're looking at. So just wanted to point out something you may start to see as you're out, walking the edge of these fields and looking around, that we've got this kind of a new coming pest again that we really don't know how to manage yet, but we need to understand whether we have it or not, because it does seem like if it's here, it'll be here the next time this field is beans. So just wanted to touch on that again, bring you up to speed with what we know and what we've seen so far, and like I say, it's a work in progress yet. So watch for some meetings and things this winter. Universities are going to probably talk about their research results, if there's anything new that they've learned, but we'll have to see. But with that, that's this week's Field Friday segment, and we'll see you next week.